Hey guys, what's up? Unrested back again. Today I'm talking about three strange crimes that always kind of surprised me even when I was living in Japan and that I still think about now that I live between both countries. And we're going to start with the first one, which I have to be careful with how I say this because YouTube will scratch my video of any monetary gain in the first few seconds if I say this. So I'm going to call it the vending machine unalivings. Okay, I in no way want to make a lesser light of anybody suffering in this video. I just have to watch my language because YouTube doesn't like us talking about anything connected to crime or stuff that's involved in this video. The vending machine unalivings is a case that happened all the way back in the 1980s, and it was strange in the sense that no one was ever found as far as a perpetrator is concerned. How this worked, if you don't know, Japan, very famous for having vending machines of all types. It's not as crazy as you may read online where they say they have like underwear vending machine and all this other weird stuff. I'm sure there are some unique shops that have unique vending machines, but for the most part, vending machines are just drinks like they are in the West. Of course, there's ones that like have ice cream, snacks, takoyaki, karage, stuff like that. Those tend to be with inside of internet cafes. There's even small places that are restaurants entirely made up of vending machines, but even those are very, very rare. That's like a niche sort of unique thing in a unique area, probably like Kabukicho or Akihabara or Denden Town. Not something you'd see around every street corner in Japan. For the most part, just think of Japan as having a lot of vending machines, and back when I was there from 2007 till now, it was, I believe, if I've got this right, I'm sure it's probably increased by now, but for every 13 people, there's one vending machine, which is a lot, a lot, a lot of vending machines. You would pretty much see them around every corner. And there was a time in 1980 where someone was using these to unalive people by adding something to the vending machine. Now, if you don't know, when you use a vending machine in Japan, you put in your coins or you scan your Ikoka, which is like a train card, or you can even use a credit card too. Some of them have credit card scanners, but actually they probably didn't have that back in the 1980s, but they still do now. And you choose your drink, and some have like a little slot machine game that plays as you're waiting for your drink to be delivered. So it comes up with a bunch of random numbers, and if all the numbers line up as the same in a row, a second drink will come out, or you'll at least get like a second choice for a second drink. And during this time, there was a promotion where a vitamin drink company, and if you don't know what a vitamin drink is, it's kind of a weird sort of syrupy mix of multivitamins in a drink. I forget the exact name of this company, but I was never a big fan of these drinks. To me personally, they taste awful. They taste disgusting. Um, Maybe people will be offended by this, but a lot of the sodas made in Japan, aside from Ramune, I do not like their taste at all. I cannot. It's so weird because they're either seltzery, where it's just tasting like club soda, or they're just so sweet it's disgusting. This is kind of what this vitamin drink was like, and they were doing a promotion where if you bought one, you had a chance to win a second. And it started out first with a guy who was doing construction work. He stopped for a drink because obviously being thirsty during the Japan heat, which is brutal during the summer, he hit the machine to get one of those vitamin drinks and saw a second one was already in the vending machine because he thought he had won this promotion. Picks it up, pops off the top, starts drinking it. Throughout the day, his condition's starting to get worse and worse. He's feeling sicker and sicker to the point that by the time he ends his job for the day, he goes directly to the hospital. And he's throwing up, he's having diarrhea. I don't think I need to go too deep into descriptions of his body's reaction to this, but it's bad. All right, he's getting weaker. They check him out, and there's starting to be like a degradation in his organs. He's losing functioning of his organs, And he tells the hospital that the only thing he did different for that day was pick up an extra drink. He thought he had one. Um, and it turns out later, when they did an analysis of his vomit, that they found a insecticide that had been placed into it. It is one where during that time it was, still is, I should say, extremely poisonous to humans. It'll literally like shut down your liver and your kidneys. And you only had to be, I believe, 20 or older to purchase it. Yes, because 20 used to be the age of an adult. I've heard recently they've changed it to 18 now in Japan, but 20 used to be the legal age of an adult, and that's what you had to be to buy it, and that was it. This continued with another man who took a couple sips, got super sick. He was a taxi driver and just stopped to do that. Um, Realizing that what had made him start to feel sick, because he had only done one thing different, which was take the extra drink that was laying in the bottom of the vending machine. So he actually was smart enough to bring it to the clinic he went to, and when they did an analysis on that, it also had insecticide in it. Um, then cases started to pop up all over Japan, which is kind of crazy. It was starting first in the Tokyo area. It was actually just outside the very borders of Tokyo. And then it started to pop up like all over Japan, the same thing happening. People drinking this drink and getting insecticide poisoning. And it killed about 20 plus people, or made them extremely ill, or left them with permanent scarring. I've heard that you can have scarring in your lungs and over your organs as well. I'm sure I'm giving that a very bad medical description, but I'm doing the best I can with the little medical knowledge I know. It left you pretty messed up after you had drank it, even if you had drank just a little bit. And finally, finally, this company decided to make tops that you can't mess with, so that they'd have like an actual, aluminum connector that would be a seal that would have to pop before you could open these up. And they came out and apologized that this had ever happened. It's not really the company's fault. Obviously, someone was getting one of the same drinks at the vending machine, putting that insecticide in it by just opening it up, dumping it in, and closing it back up for people to drink, and then adding it to the bottom of the vending machine where just looked like two of the same drink had come out. And anyone who was unfortunate enough to drink this added drink to the vending machine was either dealing with permanent organ damage or outright dying. They never found out anything about who did this. And sadly, you're probably going to hear a lot of incompetence through a couple of these other cases that I'm going to go through. And that's because I feel like sometimes in Japan, number one, it's low crime, all right? Which is great, but I feel like sometimes a country that has low crime has police who don't know how to handle high crime, if that makes sense. And I feel like this happens in Japan a lot. And the weird thing is there'll be like this big fervor at first when something horrible happens, and the Japanese police will be like, we're on top of it, we're after that criminal, we're gonna find it. And then if it doesn't get solved within the first few months, they just seem to drop it ASAP. You don't hear like a 1 year later follow up or a 5 year later follow up. Some of these cases just disappear into nothingness forever. If you want to see the most notorious ones that have ever just disappeared into the nothingness of the Japanese long-term police work, check out The Monster with 21 Heads, or in this case, the vending machine murders. They just never figured out anything. There's even a time where a man robbed a bank by merely using a phone and having the money delivered to him, and they still have never found to this day who did that, which, I mean, it seems like pretty shoddy work. Moving on to our next case, we're talking about the SOS. Now, this is one where I don't really want to defame the Japanese police on their investigation skills on this one, because it turns out a pretty weird case went down with how everything was found out little by little in this case. There is some questionable stuff at the end of it, but we do have some answers, which is good, but there's still some mysteries out there at the same time. Two hikers are up in a mountain and they go missing. They had reported to the front gate before they went to that hiking place that they were going to a certain area, which is good to do. Always report to somebody where you're going if you're going on a long-term hike, mountain climb, whatever, expedition into nature. So luckily, a party was sent after them to search and find their location. It took about 48 hours. It took quite a long time for them to find them. But when they did, the reason that they did find them was there was a series of trees that had been gathered, I should say logs, after a tree's fallen, and it had been arranged in a giant SOS sign. And the helicopter flying overhead found this sign, landed, and they were only like half a kilometer away from this sign. And they were super lucky that they got found. When they were brought back to, I guess, the search party headquarters or police headquarters that had launched the search for them, they told them, hey, great idea about making the giant SOS sign. That's what led us to finding your location. They turned to the police, looked confused, and said, we didn't make a giant SOS sign. What are you talking about? Like, pretty much, we were just lost and we were lucky you guys found us. We thought you had found us by just seeing us overhead. And they're like, no, we found you because you had that giant SOS sign made out of logs back there. They're like, nah, never did it. So then, right away, the search party thinks if they didn't do it, did someone else that's lost there right now make a giant SOS sign out of logs? And they went back and started to search more. What they found was a backpack and a tape recorder inside that backpack that had anime OSTs, original soundtracks, copied to it. And the last part of the tape had been recorded over of a man shouting, SOS, please help me, I'm stuck on a cliff. And when they searched closer to that bag, they finally found some skeletal remains. And this skeletal remains, they thought, was probably the man who had gone missing. And connected to that bag was a man's name, Kenji. I don't have the last name listed, but Kenji had gone missing, and his parents had been searching for him for a while. And when they were able to find that bag and that tape recorder and hear his voice, they knew it was him, and they thought, well, probably those remains are his too. So they had him analyzed. When they analyzed these bones, it came back as a female with blood type B. And they were like, okay, that's weird. So this is like a third missing person case close to the area that this SOS sign was found. They brought all the information back to the parents. The parents confirmed that this was indeed their son Kenji's backpack. They let them listen to the tape too, and apparently the parents said this was questionable whether or not it was their son's voice, which, I mean, it's kind of troubling to hear that because, number one, either he was too weak or like just too stressed out that the way his voice sounded just wasn't natural for them. Number two, it was just like traumatizing for the poor parents to hear their son scream out like this, and it might be easy for them to believe he's still out there on his own doing something rather than this lost backpack and pile of bones found in the woods, which I think it's understandable. I can't imagine the stress they're suffering through. And I think also, like, when you're super weak, starving, stressed out, your voice could definitely sound different recorded on a tape. After this, they said, well, we're glad you could confirm that this backpack and tape is his, but what's strange was he traveling with anyone else, because we found a female's bones, remains, blood type, etc. And they're like, no, he was definitely traveling on his own when he went hiking. He didn't have like a girlfriend or a wife or anything like that. So then later the public questioned, well then, is there a third person that the police need to find out there? Well, when this started to be raised by the media and the locals in the area, they decided, we're going to do a second analysis on these bones. This is where it gets weird. Strangely, it comes back, oh wait, it was a male's bones, and it was blood type B, which matches Kenji's blood type. Convenient that that all changed to everything they needed to confirm the death of Kenji out there in the woods. Nonetheless, the parents still say no, they don't think that this is like all his stuff or his bones or his remains. It's kind of sketchy there at the end where they're like, oh, we were totally wrong. It's not a female blood type A. It's a male blood type B. Silly us. I don't know. Kind of a sketchy end to that one. Now, the last one is probably the saddest one, and this actually happened right when I got to Japan. So it kind of creeped out a lot of us working in the English teaching industry, because it was the company that we were working for when this happened, Nova. If you don't know Nova, it's a previously bankrupt Eikaiwa, which is an English conversation school. It's kind of like going to McDonald's for English. It's kind of okay, satisfies your very small urge for learning, but is not really great in the long term for your mind or knowledge of the English language. Nova's not a great company. I don't have anything good to say about them. And they left a lot of gaijins stranded after they went bankrupt. They still exist in Japan, but are now currently owned by a company called GCOM. Nonetheless, they continue to hemorrhage money and are very small in comparison to what they used to be, a 900 plus school location. Lindsay Hawker was a person who got a job with them back at the same time I did, I think almost just 1 year after I did in 2008. She came over with them. And when she did, one day while leaving her job, a strange Japanese man named Tatsuya Ichihashi came up to her, and said, "Oh, are you my teacher?" And she was like confused, like, "No, what are you talking about? Like, I know all my students. You're not one of my students at my school." So he was like, "Well, I mean, I want you to be my teacher." And she's like, "No thanks. I'm good. I heard you work, teaching English here at Nova. If you want to go in there and apply, you can, but I don't do private lessons." So she starts to ride off on her bike, and this guy, Ichihashi, starts jogging next to her at a decent pace and jogs all the way next to her, all the way up to where she parks her bike at her apartment, and then says, "Okay, well, can I talk to you a little bit more, or at least get like a drink of water, because I'm super tired from standing next to you, running next to you, and keeping pace with your bicycle." So this is weird. The only, I'd say, good thing that really happened in this case was that Lindsay was smart enough to, when this guy kept following her, let her roommates see him follow her into her apartment. She had roommates there. They saw him come in. She was like, "Okay, here's a glass of water. Be on your way." And he was just like, wait, before I go, I'd like to hire you for, I believe the amount he offered was like Sansen Gohakuen, which would probably be the equivalent to like about $30 in today's, probably about $32 back then, that's a decent pay for a 1 hour English lesson, $30, 30 plus bucks. So she was like, "All right, I could use a little extra cash. All right, we'll meet up." So he comes over for his first lesson at her place. She's smart once again and does it at her place with her two roommates there. So again, they can see this guy, and she is not doing it alone at like, apartment by herself, or even I guess at a location by herself in the park or something. Always, do it in an open area. I think that's kind of better. And then, oh wow, he forgot to bring his money. So he lives just down the street. If she would follow him there, he'll go get her the money. So she follows him down to his apartment, and this is where the real tragedy happens. While she's there, he attacks, murders her. SA is involved as well, which I don't want to get into the gruesome details, just out of respect for the victim. And she, of course, doesn't return to her apartment, doesn't show up to work the next day. The roommates are alerted. The job is alerted. They call the police. The police realize the last person she saw is this Ichihashi guy, so they go to his place. They knock on the door. He won't answer. The neighbors next door answer and say, "Hey, what's going on? You guys looking for somebody?" And they say, "Yeah, do you mind if we go out to your balcony, your veranda, and check over if this guy's even in his place?" And they're like, "Yeah, sure, go ahead." They do. He is seen moving around in his apartment through the veranda from next door, which I know you're probably imagining, like, how can you tell from that close? But you got to remember, Japanese style apartments are cramped. Sometimes your veranda is like literally connected with just a wall separating it, where you could like literally just climb over and look in through the sliding glass doors. They see him moving around in there. They knock. They try to arrest him. He bolts out of his apartment and tries to leave with a backpack full of clothing or whatever. They're able to rip that off of him. But this guy, apparently being into running and athletics, was like his nonstop obsessive hobby. He takes off with a burst of speed, outruns all the police. As you heard earlier, he was able to keep up with a bicycle. So apparently this guy was a pretty fast runner. And the police don't catch him. Complete, pure incompetence. They don't set up like an area of search. They don't set off like, dogs after him or anything like this. They're just like, "Golly gee willikers, he got away, silly us." Really, the Keystone Cops sometimes. This is Tokyo police too. So you would think like, this is the level of like New York City police who would be dealing with like high crime and a very high populated area and a lot of different situations they'd be ready for. No. These guys let him get away on foot. He doesn't even have a car. He doesn't own a car. He doesn't have a bike. Nothing. He's able to completely go undetected for a very long time by living out on an island that has a World War II bunker on it. During that time, he is in survival mode by living off the land, fishing, apparently eating snakes and bugs. During this time, also, he tries to change the shape of his face by apparently sewing parts of his nose closer to his face to shrink the size of his nose. He sews and cuts apart part of his bottom lip to make it smaller and removes moles from his face. Now, there's a bit of some questionable stuff in here. One thing you need to realize about Ichihashi was he had rich parents. One was a dentist, one was a doctor, and apparently they had connections to plastic surgeons as well. There have been, and this is just conspiracy theories, that he was able to set up an appointment with a plastic surgeon to change the shape of his face, because if you do look at his face in between the photo of when he originally did the crime and later when he was caught, they do look significantly different. Of course, he did also lose like a ton of weight during this time due to surviving off the land. He did somehow remove moles off of his face, which I don't even know how you would go about doing that and not have your face all screwed up. But he managed to do it, and he stayed under the radar for a very long time. It went past weeks, months, and then eventually years, and he wasn't finally caught until pretty much citizens caught on to him. He was trying to leave for another island to hide out on by getting on a ferry, and luckily the ferry workers saw him and said, like, this guy looks exactly like Ichihashi, we're going to call the police. So before he could get onto the ferry, he was surrounded by the police due to these citizens who pretty much did all the work of the police, and was finally arrested. It kind of sucks how everything ends. He doesn't get the death sentence. He's put in jail for the rest of his life. He writes a book about the murder he did and then says he's going to give all the money to Hawker's parents. And of course they're like, we don't want money. We don't want blood money for our daughter's death. He apologizes to them, which is pointless because there's no apology that's going to bring back a life. They're disgusted with this guy, of course. I don't know, it doesn't ever say if they wish the death penalty on him or if they wanted to just see him in jail forever. I mean, personally, if it happened to my kid, I'd do the death sentence myself if I could. He's in jail forever, and the good thing is Japan does have a law that if you publish something as a criminal, you can't reap the rewards of it. So he doesn't get any money for that, and I don't know, there's just blood money lingering out there somewhere for this poor girl who suffered at the hands of this monster. So that's what we got for 3 very strange crimes. I know there are so many other famous crimes out there. There's some I'll probably never talk about. One I've been asked to talk about before is the cannibal killer who did this cannibal stuff in France first and then escaped the law of France by coming back to Japan where he wasn't prosecuted. I'll never do a long-term story on this guy because he is a dirtbag who made lots of money off of the murder, published a manga and all this other stuff. I'm not going to say his name, not going to go through the case. I'll never talk about this one. There's plenty of videos out on the internet if you want to look it up. But this guy loves notoriety. He is a complete narcissist, and I won't make any videos about him. There's other ones that are just so gruesome. I don't even want to talk about them on my channel. Maybe I could save them for a separate channel about true crime, but I'm probably not going to get into that. I try to keep it somewhat light on this channel as I find my viewers tend to not want to hear horror or gore-based stories. You are here for just a little bit lighter side of Japan. I just wanted to focus on some of these weirder crimes that I always say to people, Japan is 0 to 100 when it comes to crime. Either there is absolutely nothing bad happening in Japan, or it goes to level 100 and it's the worst crime you've ever heard. Japan is so weird like that. It's like they reach a breaking point and do the most horrendous crime you've ever heard. Again, there's so many times where I look into a lot of these investigations and I see some shoddy police work. I'm sure Japan itself doesn't want to hear about how bad their police are, but I feel like at times, especially when it involves foreigners, the only time crimes ever finally get solved is when shame is brought to the country. For example, the Lindsay Hawker case that I just talked about, pretty much British TV and Japanese TV had to do a bunch of news stories on it before any kind of pressure was put on the police to solve this case, and it still took years and the help of citizens for it to get solved. So, not the best situation. You, as a foreigner, are usually very safe in Japan for the most part, even in areas that people call quote unquote dangerous. I remember I lived in an area when I first got there called Sakatagawa, and people would be like, "Oh, very dangerous area," and I'd be like, "Why?" And they'd be like, "People work in factories there." I'm like, "Oh, brother, get out of here." The only place I've really heard where crime has affected people was in Roppongi, and oftentimes this is foreigner on foreigner crime. This is foreigners running bars out there in which they have a sort of scam where they'll roofie somebody's drink. They'll bring them to a bar, say, "You got to check out my bar. I'm a gaijin just like you. Come on, check it out." They'll probably like lead you by just like putting the arm around like your shoulders and lead you in there. If someone starts to do that in Roppongi, do not follow them in. I have heard multiple cases of people getting to those bars, having one or two drinks, blacking out, and finding out the next day their credit card has been charged up with numerous bills. And there's little to nothing they can do to reverse it. Pretty much what happens is they have the person in a zombie-like state and take them around to like different places and charge up their card or buy a bunch of stuff on the card or make up fake drinks and meals or whatever that they can charge up. I've heard as high as $5,000 charged up on people's credit cards. So be careful in that area. Okay, that is one area I would say I've heard some scams go down. That is out in the Tokyo area. And otherwise, Japan pretty safe. If you are a woman traveling alone, it can be sketchy sometimes. I did have two female roommates when I first moved to Japan, and both of them did deal with some kind of sketchy stuff on the train and just walking to and from work. Nothing overly essay based, but just kind of some lecherous behavior they dealt with. So I would say do be careful. And look, I don't want to pick out exact points, but if you are a white girl with blonde hair and blue eyes, you do tend to suffer a lot more harassment from what I've found. And sorry, Japan, it's just true. That's the most people I've had complain to me about SA being groped, being touched, people being lecherous around them is blonde girls with blue eyes. They get a lot more attention than any other foreigner I've seen come to Japan. Guys, we're okay for the most part. Just don't get scammed out in Roppongi, okay? Any questions you have about any of the cases I talked about today, please let me know down in the comments below. Before I end, I just want to say a shout out to my members. If you yourself want to become a member, it's $1.90 a month, and it gets you one extra video every week. That's 4 extra videos for $1.90 a month. That's, I think, a pretty decent deal. They're usually as long or longer than this video, and they just kind of get a little bit more personal. They talk about things that I'm interested in or doing in daily life that is connected to Japan, or just like things that are too gruesome for me to even try to talk about on here, or private stuff that I just don't want to release on my channel about myself, my life, or I guess situations that I've had in Japan before, if that makes sense. Let me give a shout out to everybody because we do have some new people. Javier Lucius has updated his account to the next level of Kohai. Our new people are Dada HT, thank you for joining. We've got Luna Nkola, Steve Ring, Conover Watley, Zoila Lulu, Harry Richardson, Jink640, that sounds like a new person, I don't remember that name, so thank you for joining. Blind Man Travels, Jones G, Collective Commentary, I don't think I've said that person before, so thank you for joining. Michael R. Now, sometimes people have changed their names and I think they're a new person, so if I'm doing that, sorry. Michael R, Dildo Vagins, Mio, that seems like a new person too, thank you for joining. Max Ren, Oz Dev, Corin Copacha, Alejandro Cisneros, Blat 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 Blat, Humble Monk, Andre Sanchez, Raymond Beckman, Jay, Aaron Spooner, Eviscerations, Ryan, Kaizen Grendel, Bridget, Andy, Carolyn Markey, Mitchell, Impressive Tony, Matt Lee, Silver Stitch 28, Jose Casulias, Murphy, Draz Creates, Light Lalouch, Smile Kita 13, Worm South, Chrissy Meow, Frorasu, Humble Judo Lord, Citrus, Fat Jaskins, Sprinkly Donut, Yodaru, Ricardo Contreras, Analoki, Slayer Duck, Jonas Slocum, Ice Cold, Reinhardt or Die Trying, Trek Nick, and I am Sandpaper. Thank you again so much for your patronage. It makes the channel so much easier to do, and quite frankly, worth my time. Thank you all for listening, watching today. If you liked what you saw today, hit like or hit you dislike it. Subscribe, comment, any little bit helps the algorithm. Thank you so much. Last video got a ton of views and I'm very happy. Somehow my channel continues to climb in subscribers after years of losing subscribers. So thank you again, all new people who have joined recently. I love you. I read every comment. If I do not click anything on it or respond, I'm sorry. If you don't know, I'm a teacher here in America and school has just started. It is an insane busy time for my life, but I always have time for you guys because you guys rock. I'll talk to you tomorrow if you are a member with a video release. Have a great one, and I'll see you soon.